far, so good, huh?
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event in Thanksgiving Day.
It wasn't just a workplace sitcom. It was a show where the cast improvised half their lines, a real station threatened to sue, and one episode about a tragedy became television's most devastating half hour. Behind the laugh track and radio hijinks, WKRP fought for creative freedom every single week. These are 20 secrets about WKRP in Cincinnati, hidden for decades. Number 20. CBS buried it in the worst time slot possible. When WKRP in Cincinnati premiered in September 1978, CBS had no faith in it whatsoever. They scheduled it on Monday nights at 8 p.m., directly opposite two of the biggest hits on television, Little House on the Prairie on NBC and Monday Night Football on ABC. It was a death slot, deliberate sabotage by executives who'd been forced to pick up the show, despite thinking it was too niche and too weird for mainstream success. Creator Hugh Wilson later said the network seemed actively hostile to the show, treating it like an unwanted obligation rather than a potential asset. WKRP's ratings were predictably terrible in that slot, barely registering against the competition, giving CBS ammunition to argue the show was failing and should be canceled. But something strange started happening. The few people who did watch became intensely devoted, spreading word about this smart, funny workplace comedy that felt different from everything else on television. Critics noticed too, praising the show's writing, performances, and willingness to tackle serious subjects alongside comedy. After half a season of brutal ratings, CBS finally moved WKRP to a better time slot, and suddenly the show found its audience. Number 19. Howard Hesseman refused to laugh. At his own jokes, Howard Hesseman, who played Johnny Fever, had an unusual approach to comedy that drove other cast members crazy. He absolutely refused to crack up during filming, maintaining complete composure no matter how funny the scene or how badly everyone else was losing it. His reasoning was pure method acting philosophy. Johnny Fever was a burned-out DJ who'd seen everything. Nothing surprised him, and breaking character to laugh would betray that worldview. Hesseman believed that the more seriously he played Johnny's absurdity, the funnier it would be. He was right, but his discipline made him seem almost robotic between takes. While everyone else would be cracking up, discussing how funny a scene had been, Hesseman would simply reset and prepare for the next take with no visible reaction. Some cast members found this off-putting, interpreting his seriousness as arrogance or lack of joy in the work. Lonnie Anderson later admitted she initially thought Hesseman didn't like her because he never laughed at her jokes or seemed to enjoy their scenes together. Eventually, everyone understood it was just his process, his way of protecting the character's integrity. The payoff was a performance so perfectly deadpan that Johnny Fever became one of television's most beloved characters. Hesseman's refusal to break character, even for a second, gave WKRP an anchor of authenticity that made the broader comedy work. Number 18. The real WKRP station threatened legal action. There was an actual radio station with the call letters WKRP, a small AM station in Valdosta, Georgia, that had been operating for years before the show premiered. When they discovered CBS was using the mere exact call letters for a national sitcom, they were furious and threatened immediate legal action. The station's owners felt the show would damage their reputation, confuse listeners, and potentially cost them business by associating their professional operation with a fictional comedy station full of incompetent characters. Their lawyers sent cease and desist letters demanding that CBS change the show's name or face a lawsuit. CBS's legal team investigated and discovered the claim had merit. They'd never properly cleared the call letters before production began, an oversight that could have been catastrophically expensive. Negotiations began, with CBS offering money to license the call letters. The Georgia station initially refused, wanting nothing to do with the show. Finally, a settlement was reached where CBS paid an undisclosed sum, and the real WKRP agreed not to pursue further action. The amount was reportedly substantial enough that it helped the small station upgrade equipment and expand operations. Ironically, once the show became a hit, the real WKRP in Valdosta started using their association with the sitcom as a promotional tool advertising themselves as the inspiration for the TV show, despite having initially fought to prevent any connection. Number 17. Lonnie Anderson's wardrobe caused constant network battles. Jennifer Marlowe, played by Lonnie Anderson, was supposed to be beautiful, confident, and dressed fashionably. But CBS standards and practices had very specific rules about how much skin could be shown, how tight clothing could be, and what constituted appropriate office attire for 1970s television. Every single outfit Anderson wore required network approval, and fights erupted constantly about hemlines, necklines, and whether certain dresses were too revealing for 8 p.m. broadcast. The costume department would design outfits they thought were perfect for the character, submit them for approval, and receive pages of notes demanding modifications. Hemlines needed to be lowered, necklines raised, tight dresses loosened. Anderson herself fought back, arguing that Jennifer was a liberated woman who dressed how she wanted, that the restrictions were sexist and outdated. Hugh Wilson supported Anderson completely, viewing the wardrobe battles as another front in the ongoing war for creative control. Some weeks, entire scenes had to be reshot because network censors decided an outfit that had been pre-approved was actually too provocative when they saw the finished footage. The fights became so intense that Anderson started keeping a censorship diary documenting every rejected outfit and the absurd reasons given. She later said that some of the restrictions were so ridiculous they bordered on parody, with censors objecting to things like visible collarbone or form-fitting sweaters. And number 16, Tim Reed and Frank Bonner rewrote their characters.
Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me.
When Tim Reed was cast as Venus Flytrap and Frank Bonner as Herb Tarlek, both characters were stereotypes in the original scripts. Venus was a jive-talking black DJ, written with embarrassing racial cliches, and Herb was a one-dimensional sleazy salesman with no depth or humanity. Both actors recognized the problems immediately and demanded rewrites. Reed was particularly firm, telling Hugh Wilson that he wouldn't play Venus as written, that the character needed intelligence, dignity, and complexity beyond racial stereotypes. Wilson, to his credit, listened and worked with Reed to completely reconceive the character. Venus became a former teacher with a mysterious past, someone who used his cool persona to connect with listeners but possessed genuine depth and wisdom. Reed contributed significantly to the character's evolution, essentially co-writing Venus throughout the series' run. Bonner did the same with Herb, finding humanity in what could have been a cartoon. He played Herb's desperation, his need for approval, his genuine love for his family, despite being a walking disaster. Bonner improvised extensively, adding physical comedy and vocal choices that made Herb pathetic but lovable rather than simply annoying. The partnership between actors and writers became the show's secret weapon, creating characters that felt real despite the sitcom format. Both Reed and Bonner essentially saved their roles from being embarrassing stereotypes, transforming them into fully realized people that audiences cared about rather than laughed at. Number 15. The theme song lyrics were deliberately incomprehensible.
WKRP.
Yeah, sure. Now, because of KRP, I'm able to actually buy a few things. I mean, I'm able to get like a new car or something if I want.
WKRP's opening theme is instantly recognizable, but almost nobody can understand what's actually being sung. The lyrics are deliberately garbled, mixed so low and sung so unclearly that they're essentially impossible to decipher. This wasn't an accident or poor production. Hugh Wilson specifically wanted a theme song that captured the chaotic energy of radio, where voices and music blend together in controlled confusion. He told composer Tom Wells to write something that sounded like you were spinning the radio dial, catching fragments of different sounds without clear separation. The result was WKRP in Cincinnati, sung by Steve Carlisle, with lyrics so buried in the mix that fans debated for years about what was actually being said. Wilson loved that the theme song frustrated people, that it didn't provide easy answers or clear messaging. He viewed it as perfect metaphor for the show itself, which resisted easy categorization and conventional sitcom formulas. CBS hated it, demanding a clearer, more traditional theme song that would help viewers understand what the show was about. Wilson refused, and the network eventually gave up fighting. Decades later, when home video and streaming made it possible to isolate and enhance the audio, fans finally deciphered the actual lyrics and discovered they were fairly straightforward descriptions of the show's premise. But for years, the incomprehensible theme song was part of WKRP's identity, a deliberate choice that drove network executives crazy while perfectly capturing the show's unconventional spirit. Number 14, Gary Sandy, was considered too handsome for the role.
And I think I hear something now. The crowd is moving out into the parking area.
When Gary Sandy auditioned for Andy Travis, the station's new program director, Hugh Wilson's first reaction was that Sandy looked like a movie star, not a radio manager. Andy was supposed to be an everyman, someone who could have been anyone's coworker or friend, not a leading man with chiseled features and perfect hair. Wilson almost passed on Sandy entirely based on appearance, worried that his looks would distract from the character and make Andy seem less relatable. But Sandy's audition was so good, his understanding of the character so complete, that Wilson took a chance despite his reservations. The compromise was that they deliberately dressed Sandy down, avoiding anything too stylish or flattering, and positioned him as the straight man surrounded by more colorful characters. Sandy essentially had to downplay his natural charisma to make Andy work as an audience surrogate rather than a romantic lead. This created an interesting dynamic where Sandy was technically the show's lead, but often faded into the background, letting the ensemble shine while he provided grounding and structure. Some critics noted that Andy Travis was television's most underwritten lead character, often reactive rather than active, serving the story without dominating it. This wasn't an accident, but a deliberate strategy to let WKRP be a true ensemble show rather than a vehicle for a conventional leading man. Sandy handled this thanklessly, supporting everyone else's comedy while rarely getting showcase moments himself. Number 13. Gordon Jump was fighting depression. Throughout production,
So far, so good, huh?
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event in Thanksgiving Day.
Gordon Jump, who played station manager Arthur Carlson, delivered one of television's warmest performances as the bumbling but well-meaning boss. Behind the scenes, Jump was battling severe clinical depression that made simply showing up to work a daily struggle. He'd been dealing with depression for years, long before WKRP, but the pressure of a network sitcom and the fear of being replaced if anyone discovered his condition made everything worse. Jump would arrive early, isolate himself in his dressing room, and emerge only when called to set, putting on a cheerful face that completely contradicted his internal state. Cast members recall Jump being friendly but distant, never socializing after work, rarely participating in the camaraderie that developed among the ensemble. Some interpreted this as aloofness or disinterest, not understanding that Jump was using every ounce of energy to maintain his performance and had nothing left for socializing. His portrayal of Mr. Carlson's vulnerability and insecurity wasn't entirely acting. Jump channeled his own feelings of inadequacy and fear into the character, creating moments of surprising depth in what could have been a one-note buffoon. The famous Turkeys Away episode, where Carlson experiences catastrophic failure and humiliation, hit particularly close to home for Jump, who understood that feeling intimately. Years later, after getting treatment and speaking publicly about his depression, Jump admitted that WKRP was one of the darkest periods of his life, despite being his greatest professional success, that he'd spent 4 years pretending to be happy while suffering privately, giving audiences joy while experiencing none himself. Number 12. The show improvised more than any sitcom of its era.
I have been standing outside that door, and that is a good audition tape, and you know it.
This is a private meeting, Quarters.
New scandal in our nation's capital, while right here at home, Cincinnati City Council copes with union demands. Details right after this.
WKRP in Cincinnati operated unlike any other sitcom on television at that time, with Hugh Wilson encouraging extensive improvisation and script changes during filming. The writers would provide a solid structure and key plot points, but much of the dialogue, especially in the DJ booth scenes and office banter, was created on the spot by actors riffing off each other. Howard Hesseman and Tim Reed particularly excelled at this. Their on-air radio segments often improvised completely, creating authentic-sounding DJ patter that scripted dialogue couldn't match. The technique created continuity nightmares for editors, with multiple takes featuring entirely different jokes and dialogue, forcing decisions about which version best served the story. Some episodes essentially had to be rewritten in the editing room, assembling a coherent narrative from improvised footage that hadn't followed the script. CBS was uncomfortable with this approach, worried about loss of control and inability to preview content before broadcast. Network executives demanded scripts be followed more closely, wanting predictability and the ability to censor problematic material before filming. Wilson fought constantly to maintain the improvisational freedom, arguing it gave WKRP authenticity and energy that rigidly scripted shows lacked. The compromise was that actors could improvise during filming, but the show had to clear any significantly changed dialogue with standards and practices before the episode aired. This created a bizarre workflow where episodes were essentially written 3 times, once by writers, once by actors during filming, and once by editors assembling the final cut. Number 11. Jan Smithers' hated being, compared to Lonnie Anderson.
Les, you still there?
Yes, Johnny?
You see anything yet?
Well, no, there's quite a crowd, though. Where's the big guy?
Jan Smithers, who played Assistant Bailey Quarters, created a smart, capable character who was supposed to contrast with Jennifer's bombshell persona. The show deliberately presented them as different types of attractive women, one relying on glamour while the other emphasized intelligence and competence. But media coverage constantly pitted them against each other, comparing their looks, asking invasive questions about rivalry, and essentially reducing both actresses to their appearance despite the show's attempt to celebrate different expressions of femininity. Smithers found this treatment exhausting and insulting, particularly the assumption that she must resent Anderson for being more conventionally glamorous. In reality, Smithers and Anderson were friends who supported each other against the sexist media coverage, but journalists kept manufacturing conflict because catfight narratives sold magazines better than stories about professional women supporting each other. The comparisons also affected how Smithers was perceived by audiences, with Bailey often dismissed as the less attractive alternative to Jennifer, rather than appreciated as a fully developed character in her own right. Smithers later said that playing Bailey was both empowering and frustrating. Empowering because the character was written with intelligence and agency. Frustrating because media coverage and some audience reactions refused to see beyond the plain one. She particularly hated interview questions about her wardrobe, makeup choices, and whether she felt overshadowed by Anderson's beauty. Questions that had nothing to do with her performance or the show's actual themes. The constant comparisons eventually contributed to Smithers leaving acting entirely after WKRP ended. Number 10. The Thanksgiving. Turkey episode was based on real events.
Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me.
Turkeys Away, WKRP's most famous episode where Mr. Carlson drops live turkeys from a helicopter as a promotion, wasn't complete fiction. Hugh Wilson based it on an actual radio promotion gone wrong, though the details differ from what appeared on screen. In the real incident, a station manager in the South actually did attempt a turkey giveaway involving helicopters in the 1950s or 60s, believing the birds could fly to safety. The turkeys did not fly as expected, creating chaos and potentially injuring people, though reports suggest the damage was less catastrophic than the show depicted. Wilson heard about this disastrous promotion through radio industry contacts and immediately recognized its comedic potential, seeing it as perfect metaphor for well-intentioned incompetence that defined Mr. Carlson's management style. The episode was written and filmed with unusual care, the production team understanding they had something special. Gordon Jump's delivery of the line, "As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly," became one of television's most quoted moments, perfectly capturing the mixture of horror and absurdity. CBS was nervous about the episode, worried that animal rights groups would protest, or that depicting violence against turkeys even implied would generate complaints. They considered pulling the episode entirely, but eventually allowed it to air with slight modifications. The response was overwhelming, with the turkey drop instantly becoming WKRP's defining moment. The episode that casual viewers remembered even if they'd forgotten everything else about the show. It proved that sometimes the most absurd comedy comes from real life, that truth really is stranger than fiction, and that well-intentioned stupidity is eternally funny regardless of era or medium. Number 9. Music licensing destroyed. The show's syndication value...
Les, you still there?
Yes, Johnny?
You see anything yet?
Well, no, there's quite a crowd, though. Where's the big guy?
WKRP in Cincinnati was unique among sitcoms for featuring extensive contemporary rock music, with characters actually playing real songs on air, rather than generic sound-alikes. The music was essential to the show's authenticity, creating a genuine radio station atmosphere that generic music couldn't match. But using real songs required licensing agreements that the producers negotiated specifically for initial broadcast and limited reruns. These licenses were expensive but manageable for network television. The problem emerged years later when WKRP went into syndication. The original music licenses had expired, and renewing them for unlimited syndication would have cost millions of dollars that nobody wanted to spend. Instead, syndicators replaced almost all the original music with generic sound-alike tracks, completely destroying the show's atmosphere and authenticity. Scenes that were built around specific songs suddenly made no sense with different music. Johnny Fever's passionate rants about rock and roll played over bland elevator music. Character-defining moments lost all impact because the songs that gave them meaning. The butchered syndication version introduced WKRP to new generations of viewers, but it was a fundamentally different and inferior show. Hugh Wilson was devastated, calling the music replacement a betrayal of everything they'd worked to create. Cast members refused to watch syndicated episodes, unable to bear seeing their work destroyed by cheap replacement music. When DVD releases finally happened decades later, some original music was restored, but not all, because licensing costs remained prohibitive. Number 8. The cast didn't know about cancellation until they read it in Variety.
Just got off the air.
Got insomnia, you know. Can't go to sleep before 3. I gotta get up about 5.
After 4 seasons of ratings, struggles, creative battles, and constant time slot changes, WKRP in Cincinnati was canceled by CBS in 1982. The network made the decision weeks before informing anyone involved with the show. Not the producers, not Hugh Wilson, definitely not the cast. Everyone learned about the cancellation the same way the public did, by reading it in Variety and other trade publications. Cast members were blindsided, showing up to what they thought would be production meetings for season 5 and discovering instead that the show no longer existed. The lack of professional courtesy infuriated everyone involved. There was no final episode planned, and no chance to write a proper conclusion, no opportunity to say goodbye to characters they had lived with for 4 years. The season 4 finale became the series finale by accident, with no awareness that it was the last episode. It ended on an unresolved note because everyone assumed they'd continue those storylines the following season. Hugh Wilson was particularly bitter about the disrespect, viewing it as CBS's final insult after 4 years of network interference and creative battles. He'd fought constantly for the show's survival, made endless compromises to keep it on the air, and his reward was learning about cancellation from a trade magazine rather than a phone call. The cast never got closure, never had a wrap party, never filmed a final scene together, knowing it was the end. Years later, several cast members cited this as one of the most painful professional experiences of their careers, not because the show ended, but because they were denied the dignity of a proper conclusion. Number 7, Howard Hesseman, nearly quit over creative differences.
Because this is a whole new production, production staff, basically with the exception of Norman Fell and Lynn Redgrave.
By season 3, Howard Hesseman was deeply frustrated with how WKRP was developing, particularly the network's pressure to add more conventional sitcom elements like physical comedy, catchphrases, and repetitive jokes. Hesseman believed the show worked because it respected its characters and treated radio as a real profession rather than a joke factory. When CBS started pushing for broader comedy and more likable storylines, Hesseman fought back aggressively, arguing in production meetings, and sometimes refusing to perform material he considered beneath the show's standards. The conflicts escalated to the point where Hesseman seriously considered leaving, telling his agent to explore other opportunities and making it clear to producers that he wouldn't compromise Johnny Fever's integrity for network demands. Hugh Wilson desperately tried to keep Hesseman happy, rewriting scripts to accommodate his concerns and fighting CBS on his behalf. But the pressure was constant, with network executives questioning why Hesseman had so much creative control and whether he was more trouble than he was worth. The situation reached a breaking point during season 3 when CBS demanded Johnny Fever develop a catchphrase that could be used in promos and merchandising. Hesseman refused absolutely, calling the idea creatively bankrupt and insulting to the character. He threatened to quit immediately if forced to comply. Wilson supported him, and the network backed down, but the relationship was permanently damaged. Hesseman stayed with WKRP through its cancellation, but later admitted he'd been one incident away from walking out multiple times, that only his respect for Wilson and the cast kept him from abandoning a show that was being systematically compromised by network interference. Number 6. The Venus flytrap drug episode almost never aired.
Turning to the commodities, soybeans sagged while corn popped to an all-time high.
New scandal in our nation's capital, while right here at home, Cincinnati City Council copes with union demands. Details right after this.
More coffee, Harold?
What? In 1978, WKRP aired an episode called A Date with Jennifer that included a subplot where Venus flytrap counsels a teenage caller about drug use. The scene featured Tim Reed delivering a powerful, serious monologue about the dangers of addiction and the importance of seeking help. It was groundbreaking television, treating drug abuse seriously on a sitcom and featuring a black character as a voice of wisdom and authority. CBS absolutely hated it. Network executives argued that drug content had no place in a comedy show, that the serious tone clashed with the sitcom format, and that affiliates in conservative markets would refuse to air the episode. They demanded the scene be cut entirely, offering to let the episode run short rather than include what they considered inappropriate content. Hugh Wilson refused, arguing that WKRP's whole premise was that radio could address real issues, that Venus specifically was supposed to be more than just a cool DJ. The fight went to the highest levels of CBS management, with Wilson threatening to quit if the scene was censored. Finally, a compromise was reached where the episode would air, but with parental discretion warnings, and the option for local affiliates to skip it. Several southern stations did refuse to broadcast the episode, replacing it with reruns. But where it did air, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Parents and teachers praised the show for addressing drug abuse thoughtfully. Tim Reed received letters from viewers thanking him for the scene, saying it had helped them talk to their own children about drugs. The episode that CBS tried to censor became one of WKRP's most acclaimed, proving that sitcoms could tackle serious subjects without sacrificing their identity or insulting their audience's intelligence. Number 5. Lonnie Anderson and Jan Smithers were paid significantly less than male cast members.
A whole mess of news.
WKRP. Morning, Les. Morning, Johnny.
Cincinnati. It's all yours.
Despite being leads and appearing in nearly every episode, Lonnie Anderson and Jan Smithers earned substantially less money than their male counterparts throughout WKRP's entire run. Gary Sandy, as the nominal lead, made the most, but even supporting male actors like Howard Hesseman and Tim Reed earned more per episode than Anderson, despite her character being arguably the most popular and certainly the most used in promotional materials. The pay disparity was standard for Hollywood in the late 70s, but particularly egregious on WKRP, where Jennifer and Bailey were as central to the show as any male character. Anderson discovered the inequality during season 2 when contract negotiations revealed the gap. She was furious, demanding equal pay and threatening to walk if not compensated fairly. CBS refused, arguing that the pay structure was already established and changing it would set a precedent they couldn't afford. Anderson seriously considered leaving, but was contractually trapped, unable to quit without facing lawsuits and career damage. She and Smithers discussed the situation privately, both recognizing the injustice, but feeling powerless to change it. The unfairness was compounded by the fact that Anderson's image was used extensively in marketing, her face on promotional materials, her character's appeal driving much of the show's audience. She was being exploited for promotion while being paid less than male actors who generated less viewer interest. The situation radicalized Anderson politically, making her an advocate for pay equity and women's rights in Hollywood. Years later, she spoke openly about the discrimination, naming it as one of her biggest regrets about WKRP. Not that she did the show, but that she accepted unequal pay without fighting harder or walking away despite the professional consequences. Number 4. The Who's on First episode was completely unscripted.
Whole new production staff, whole new, basically with the exception of Norman Fell and Lynn Redgrave.
One of WKRP's most memorable episodes featured Les Nessman attempting to explain a confusing news story in a sequence that devolved into Abbott and Costello-style confusion. The scene wasn't in the original script at all. Richard Sanders, who played Les, was goofing around between takes, improvising a confused news report that made director Hugh Wilson laugh so hard he decided to build an entire episode around it. The problem was they had no script, no story, just Sanders' improvised bit and a vague idea about miscommunication. Wilson decided to shoot it anyway, essentially creating an episode in real time with actors improvising around Sanders' confusion. The cast had never worked this way before, filming without a script or clear direction, just trusting that something funny would emerge from the chaos. What resulted was one of the show's funniest episodes, capturing genuine confusion and spontaneous humor that scripted comedy couldn't replicate. The other actors were genuinely trying to understand what Sanders was saying, their confusion authentic, because they didn't know where the scene was going any more than their characters did. CBS was horrified when they learned an episode had been filmed without an approved script, demanding to see footage before deciding whether to air it. When executives watched the rough cut, they reluctantly admitted it was hilarious, but insisted this could never happen again, that scripts must be approved before filming. Wilson agreed, but privately planned to keep improvising whenever inspiration struck, knowing that some of WKRP's best moments came from spontaneity rather than careful planning. The episode proved that rigid structure wasn't always necessary, that talented performers given freedom could create magic that writers couldn't predict or plan. Number 3. Este Barriswilm of the show. Address the Who concert tragedy, days after it happened.
And when I went right through my forehead, it's bleeding gash. So, what to do? We were supposed to
proved he could be as clumsy as his character, newsman Les Nessman, when he hit his head on a stage light.
On December the 3rd, 1979, 11 people were killed in a crowd crush at a Who concert in Cincinnati. The tragedy shocked the nation and devastated Cincinnati specifically, the city associated with WKRP. Hugh Wilson immediately decided the show had to address it, that pretending the tragedy hadn't happened would be disrespectful and dishonest. He wrote an episode called In Concert, where WKRP characters deal with the aftermath of a similar fictional tragedy, processing grief, guilt, and the complicated emotions around music and youth culture. The episode was written, filmed, and aired within weeks of the actual tragedy, an impossibly fast turnaround that required everyone working overtime and the network cutting through usual approval processes. CBS was nervous about addressing something so recent and painful, worried about exploitation accusations or reopening wounds. But Wilson insisted the episode wasn't exploitative, it was necessary, a way for television to acknowledge real tragedy and help viewers process collective grief. The finished episode was unlike anything WKRP had done before, almost entirely serious with minimal comedy, featuring characters struggling with questions that had no easy answers. It was devastating television, particularly a scene where a young caller tells Venus Flytrap he was at the concert, that he survived, but his friend didn't, and he doesn't know how to process the guilt. Tim Reed improvised much of his response, drawing on genuine emotion about the real tragedy. When the episode aired, the response was overwhelming. Cincinnati residents wrote thanking the show for acknowledging their pain. Critics praised WKRP for demonstrating that sitcoms could be more than escapism, that they could engage meaningfully with real tragedy. Number 2. Frank Bonner directed more episodes than anyone realized.
Really must stop right here. That's not good. We got to play real records. So, well, that's going to cost money.
Frank Bonner, who played sales manager Herb Tarlek, was also a trained director who'd been working behind the camera since the 1960s. When WKRP began, he was hired strictly as an actor, but by season 2, budget constraints and scheduling problems led to Bonner offering to direct episodes while also performing in them. This dual role was unusual for sitcoms at the time, where actors and directors were separate positions with clear boundaries. Bonner essentially volunteered to work twice as hard for minimal additional pay because he loved the show and wanted to help it succeed despite constant production challenges. He'd arrive hours early to plan shots and blocking, direct all day while also acting in scenes, then stay late to review footage and plan the next day's shoot. The workload was crushing, but Bonner never complained, viewing it as his contribution to keeping WKRP alive. What's remarkable is how few people knew about Bonner's directorial work. CBS didn't promote it, worried that audiences would be confused about an actor directing himself. Credits listed him as director, but casual viewers rarely noticed. Even some cast members didn't fully understand what Bonner was doing, just knowing that he seemed to be everywhere at once, involved in everything. Bonner directed over a dozen episodes throughout the series' run, shaping WKRP's visual style and pacing as much as any credited director. But he received almost no recognition for this work, his contributions hidden behind his more visible role as Herb. Years later, when critics reassessed WKRP and discovered Bonner's extensive directorial work, he was finally given credit for being one of the show's unsung creative forces, someone who sacrificed personal recognition to serve the ensemble. Number 1. Hugh Wilson fought CBS over, the series finale that never happened. When WKRP was canceled, Hugh Wilson had already written a series finale that would have properly concluded the show's story and given characters satisfying endings. The script featured the station being sold, the staff scattering to different jobs, and a final scene where they gathered one last time to reminisce about their time together. It was emotional, funny, and provided the closure that 4 years of storytelling deserved. CBS refused to let him film it. The network's reasoning was purely financial. If they officially acknowledged the cancellation with a finale, they'd have to pay for an additional episode beyond the contracted season. By simply not renewing the show and letting it end without ceremony, they saved money and avoided any obligation to provide closure. Wilson was devastated and furious, arguing that the cast and crew deserved a proper goodbye, that the audience deserved a real ending after investing years in these characters. He offered to film the finale at reduced cost, to make budget concessions, anything to create a satisfying conclusion. CBS wouldn't budge, viewing it as throwing money at a canceled show rather than investing in new programming. The decision haunted Wilson for decades. He kept the unfilmed script in his office, occasionally taking it out and rereading what might have been. Cast members have said that not getting a proper finale was their biggest regret about WKRP, and that ending abruptly felt like the show's story was stolen from them. When WKRP returned briefly in the early 90s with WKRP in Cincinnati, the new class, Wilson tried to incorporate elements of his original finale, but it wasn't the same. The moment had passed, and the proper ending WKRP deserved was lost forever to network penny pinching and corporate indifference to creative legacy.